On this episode of Just Seen It, we review one man's fight for his freedom in 12 Years a Slave.
After impressing everyone with Shame, Steve McQueen doesn't disappoint with 12 Years a Slave.
Two new TV dramas, Dracula and Almost Human.
Dracula is like this supernatural show for Downton Abbey fans.
One man's struggle to survive in All Is Lost.
It has been 7 years, but Robert Redford has finally returned to the big screen as an actor who doesn't direct himself.
And based on true events, the high seas drama, Captain Phillips.
Unknown first-time actors hold their own with Tom Hanks.
All right here on Just Seen It. In the pre-Civil War United States, Solomon Northup is a free black man, but he is abducted and sold into slavery to a malevolent slave owner.
The condition of your laborers, it's all wrong.
They're my property.
You say that with pride.
I say it as fact.
Man does how he pleases with his property.
Yet an abolitionist changes his life and his freedom in 12 Years a Slave.
Hi, I'm Liz.
Hello, I'm Charlotte.
And I'm Sean. Next up, we're going to talk about 12 Years a Slave, based on the memoir of Solomon Northup. We've all just seen it. Charlotte, why don't you start?
We're going to start with the screenplay written by John Ridley. I think he did a beautiful job adapting a story that was autobiographical, which is always very difficult because you're trying to express the words of someone else and express feeling. I think he did a magnificent job.
Yeah, I guess the idea is that you hear the title 12 Years a Slave, you kind of know what you're in for, but I was still in suspense the entire time. Even though I knew I was just going to see horrific incident after horrific incident, I was sitting there just completely drawn to the storyline and drawn to the experience.
But it's still pretty much a taboo topic in America. So I think the fact that so many Americans were not involved was why it was so true. Because I feel like in the casting and in the writing, if Americans were involved, I think it would not have been so pure, because it is an area that a lot of times Americans don't feel comfortable going into.
I liked it a lot. It's a very well-made picture. As a slave narrative, I don't feel that it gave me a tremendous amount of information I didn't already know. It's a very difficult film to watch at times. It's very brutal. The violence is very visceral, to a degree where I thought that Steve McQueen almost seemed more interested in the brutal aspects of what was going on here than the more hopeful aspects, which are there.
They're the most controversial elements, and Steve McQueen is drawn to controversy as a filmmaker.
But I disagree, because the hopeful aspect of it is he did achieve the American dream, which is freedom.
The ending of this film was not as emotionally affecting to me as it could have been, because I felt like he pushed all of the effort into that, the violent parts of it.
Right. Without jumping to the ending, I didn't see that any more so than in a war film.
The film really followed an emotional arc of him putting up walls and those walls breaking down. And that was so exciting to watch. It wasn't this like traditional narrative of this man enslaved achieving freedom. I thought it really focused on the emotional through line instead of just the historical one.
It must be horrifying to have experienced freedom and then have it taken away.
Yeah.
I mean, as opposed to coming here on a slave ship and never, really experience your life in America as a free person. Yeah. So that I thought was definitely captured in this.
It's like more the individual story than trying to tackle this entire epic scope of slavery in America.
Small ends.
Days ago, I was with my family. In my home. Now you tell me all is lost. Tell no one who I am. That's the way to survive. Well, I don't want to survive. I want to live.
The juxtaposition of a place so beautiful and so remote to have such horrors. I mean, I thought he did a really great job of capturing that. Even though the plantations, you can tell they were vast, but he didn't focus on like huge establishing shots. He kept it small.
Chiwetel Ejiofor takes moments, and Steve McQueen allows him to take those moments where you get to see just the small little details of his experience. You know, it's like like you're saying with the long takes. The camera just sat on him, and you got to see the breadth of his performance.
Felt like 10 minutes.
Yeah.
It was exhausting.
Shop well, sir, but mind your wallet.
Pay no attention to this gentleman's nonsense.
Jasper. My regrets for the intrusion, sir.
No intrusion.
Good day, sir.
Lupita Nyong as Patsy was fantastic, and she showed a range that went from just harrowing, just to absolute desperation, to joy, to pride, and I thought she was just a gem.
And it's probably the most tragic element of the film involves her.
Fassbender and Sarah Paulson. The struggle between the two of them, I thought was iconic. He had to not only fight off his wife, his affections for his slave, and she had to deal with that as well. So the struggle between the three of them, I thought McQueen did a great job.
It's a great role for Michael Fassbender, who continues his work with Steve McQueen. He was in Hunger and Shame before this. He's a terrific actor, and I think the two of them just have, great work together.
I still want to credit Steve McQueen, our filmmaker, above all, because as a director, you never really know what to expect. I mean, I remember being in the theater and just jumping out of my seat because like a pen dropped or something very minimal happened in the first 5 minutes because I was so on edge knowing that Steve McQueen was taking us through this story.
This is a complex film that depicts the horrors of the slave trade in an emotional, powerful way. See it.
This is an experience. It's not merely a film. This is something you are not going to read in history books. See it.
This film is so effective that I never need to see it again. However, I do think everyone else should see it.
Cheers. Cheers. I don't think this is the appropriate film to make a pun about.
We look at two new TV dramas. The first is the classic tale that gets a new bite in NBC's Dracula. And the second is about cops, both human and android, in Fox's Almost Human.
Hi, I'm Salim.
I'm Kevin.
And I'm Brenna, and we're here to talk about two new shows, Dracula from NBC and Almost Human on Fox. Let's start off with Dracula. We've all just seen it. Who wants to start?
Well, I'll take a bite. So the show is created by Cole Haddon, and surprisingly, this is his first show that he's ever done. And I like it. We know Dracula. This is a character that's been around the collective consciousness forever. So of course, how are they going to make it different? And I think they did a really good job.
They made it boring.
They did not make it boring. They turned the story on its head.
Oh my God. No, okay, so yeah, there is a couple twists that I won't reveal.
But they're great twists.
But it's all about I'm going to be a businessman and I'm going to take a company down to get back at people. That's Dracula.
But that's just a part of it.
Murdered people to do this.
Exactly, but that's just a part that he
They just talk.
Wait, no. I have to say that having something like this on NBC is with all the blood and with all of the gore and some very sexy things happening. It's quite refreshing.
Yeah, no, it has some adult.
Sexier and more bloody.
It had a lot of adult situations. I mean, obviously they're trying to contend with cable. Because of how dark it can get, I really enjoyed the dialogue. I thought it was smart and it was witty. Yes, there are instances here and there that it's not as smart and witty, but I think that the majority of it is pretty good.
I thought it was effective dialoog. It felt
expository.
Of course it's going to be expository. It's the first episode.
2 episodes we saw, and it was all like talk. It's like, show me something.
Wait, you say species is like people or animals. What do you mean by that?
Is that not what Mr. Darwin taught us? That man evolves. That is what I've come here to accomplish. To facilitate in that evolution. Give nature a helping hand, so to speak.
Let's talk about our actors, Dracula especially, Jonathan Rhys-Meyers. At first, I thought it was a bit self-indulgent, considering that he is the producer of this show and he is the captain of the ship. And as compared to something like Sleepy Hollow, where it has dual protagonists, this is just him. But I like it. I think that he's strong enough as a lead.
I found him very typical. He did the little sinister glances over the shoulder. It was all stuff we've seen before. I didn't find it compelling. It wasn't fresh. It wasn't new. His eyes were always bloodshot and glossy. I was like, dude, what's going on? I just found it so uninteresting, and I really, really, really was looking forward to this, and I was disappointed.
I enjoy the production values. They actually had some pretty cool action scenes. We have Dracula with this sword and he's cutting people's heads off. So they're trying to have this cool factor, similar to Sleepy Hollow with the Headless Horseman having like a machine gun.
I'm going to agree. I'm going to jump in right now and at least give it some props for that because it looks amazing. Amazing. That's what actually kept me watching because it's beautiful.
It is absolutely gorgeous. Although I think my favorite parts of the production are the costumes, which are gorgeous. The gowns that these women wear are fantastic. And the lighting. I really liked what they did with the lighting.
Cinematography.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
I mean, there's a scene where it's just between Dracula and this young reporter, but there's three people in the room because there's him, there's the reporter, and then there's the sunlight coming through a window.
Yeah, it was a great
it's
scene.
brilliant.
Take 3 parts Downton Abbey and 1 part vampire, and you get NBC's Dracula. Too bad it does what Dracula does to his victims. Sucks. Skip it.
This show takes a story that we all know and love and makes it interesting and new, and I'm really excited to see what they do with it. So I say see it.
A unique take on an already oversaturated property. The twists and turns will keep you coming back for more. See it.
Well, our votes add up to 2 full tickets, which is a stream it for Dracula.
All right, well, let's switch over to Fox and talk about Almost Human.
Almost Human was created by Fringe's J.H. Wyman under the J.J. Abrams banner, and it's futuristic tale where cops are teamed with androids.
It's like Blade Runner, the TV show. It's
mixed with
awesome.
iRobot.
Yeah, it's got these premises.
There is no identity to this show at all.
Well, there is now. It starts off borrowing a lot. It's got the cop who's got android bits and who doesn't trust androids because an android let somebody die once. Which is very iRobot, and it's got these cops in the future where there's a lot of crime, and it's just dystopian. That's very Blade Runner, but it just uses these in the beginning to get itself set up.
But like halfway through, you finally meet the android, and it's a special android too that has also these issues. So you're not even really in the world yet before they start changing the rules of the world. I didn't care about any of the characters. There's no emotional core. I just didn't care. Carl Urban was boring. You know, he's normally a good actor, but here he just doesn't.
I don't think he's quite ready to carry his own show yet.
Yeah,
Agreed.
no, I agree.
I think that this may be the project that makes him ready for that. I'm excited to see him grow in this character, but at this stage in the pilot, he's not quite there yet.
Yeah, he did not feel comfortable in this role at all, and I think that's something that's going to change over the course of the series. This is going to be a show that needs some time, needs a couple of episodes, maybe even a season to really get its voice, especially even the character. But I think that on the opposite end of that, we have Michael Ealy, who I think is perfect as the android, and I think he's very comfortable in his skin. So I think that we have enough there with these two characters to actually progress this along. Now, again, Carl Urban for me was channeling Dredd a lot. It's just Dredd without his helmet on.
Carl Urban is in every role.
I know. No, you're right. You're right.
Lord Vaco. He always Dredd.
Yeah.
All he knows how to do is grit.
Grit and in this scowl, and if anything, he looked annoyed the entire time. But I was okay with that because his character's gonna change.
Because it's a buddy movie. We've seen this before.
Almost Human might feel like something you've seen before, but like our robot and human leads, there's a lot going on underneath the surface. See it.
This show from J.J. Abrams' brand is barely human, and I wouldn't be surprised if it gets almost canceled. Skip it.
Almost Human uses a lot of well-established sci-fi tropes, but uses it in what could be a very original way. So for that, I say see it.
Our votes add up to 2 tickets, which is a stream it for Almost Human.
We have Dracula and androids.
In 2012, Shane Bitney Crone posted a video on YouTube marking the anniversary of his partner Tom's death. When Tom was brought to the hospital, Shane was not allowed to be by his deathbed. He didn't have any death benefits, he wasn't allowed to plan the funeral, and Tom's parents made sure he didn't attend the funeral by threatening violence. The feature film documentary Bridegroom is his story.
She wanted to let me know that I wasn't welcome to attend his funeral because if I do show up, his uncle and his father had planned an attack.
By disinviting Shane to the funeral, they're not even mentioning him there. They're not fighting against having a gay son. What they're fighting against is love.
Directed by Linda Bloodworth Thomason, Bridegroom isn't a piece of political activism. It doesn't point fingers at partisan or religious groups. It doesn't even mention Prop 8 or the recent fight for marriage equality. What it does is simply present a beautiful love story about 2 men who created a life together. The tragedy and the resulting discrimination are there to illustrate the need for marriage equality, but the heart of the story is Tom and Shane.
Everyone would wish that they had the love that Tom and Shane had.
I'm Tom. And I'm Shane. And we're in Oahu.
Bridegroom will be in theaters in New York and LA in October, and will also be on the OWN network on October 27th. It will also be available for streaming on Netflix on the same day. If you do see it, let us know what you think by tweeting us or leave a comment on our YouTube or Facebook page.
A man on a 5-month solo voyage becomes lost at sea.
This is the Virginia Jean with an SOS call. Over.
With communications cut off, he tries to track a course home. Battling the elements, he struggles to survive in All Is Lost.
Hi, I'm Aaron.
I'm Kevin.
And I'm Rachel. Next up is All Is Lost, starring Robert Redford. We've all just seen it. Is all lost?
This film is written and directed by J.C. Chandor, who also gave us Margin Call. Tells the story of an old man named in the film Our Man. We don't ever hear his name. He is on a yacht in the middle of nowhere, and he encounters some problems with his boat, some crazy storms.
It's just an old man in the sea.
Just an old man in the sea. It's how apt.
What I find interesting is that the script was actually not a script. It was 30 pages of prose.
Oh.
And that's all it was, because really there is no dialogue. There is a voiceover at the beginning, which gives you a tiny bit of character, and then he swears a couple times, like really loud.
Yeah.
And that's the dialogue.
But, well, the script does have an absurdly thorough knowledge of boating and sailing. Clearly, Chandor must have done some homework or has some sort of background knowledge.
He grew up with sailboats.
There was.
And that is apparent. This is a one-person film. So you're charting dangerous territory. This is sort of like Life of Pi or Castaway, if you remember the Tom Hanks film.
Totally.
When you're doing a one-person film, you can use humor, you can use backstory, you need to use something to get yourself very involved with this character. We know the end of the story before the story starts, or
well,
we think we do.
And we don't.
We think we do. So immediately, there's not as much suspense here. This becomes a process film.
With his voiceover at the beginning, he's writing clearly to, it seems like family or friends, and he has this guilt for the way he's treated them. I wanted a little bit more so that I cared about the situation. Because we didn't know much about him, then we project ourselves onto him.
Yes,
and
totally.
so then I was kind of like, what would I do in this situation? And how would I handle this situation? And in that, I actually felt like, you know what, if I get lost in sea, now I know some things to do and not do.
The acting is very strong, because to me that's where I get the connection to the character, because of these really subtle moments. Everything he does very slowly. I mean, yes, Robert Redford is an older man, so he's gonna move a little slower, but he's playing an old man on a yacht, and he's moving very deliberately, very slowly, always grabbing onto things. I mean, it's all these nuances in his physical performance that really connect me to his character. I mean, he has no dialogue, so it has to be all physical performance.
And see, I disagree with you
this
there.
is career revitalizing, and as far as I'm concerned, I mean, he's not directing himself, which is a real good thing, I think, for an actor, especially him in particular.
Robert Redford is like 76 years old. So this is a physically demanding role for him, and you could feel it every step of the way.
All of the physical stuff was great, the physical exhaustion. It was the stuff that should have been easy for him. The emotional vulnerability, that for me is what was missing. There are times when he's mugging, and that takes me out. And anytime he has to show more than just ordinary acting moments, anytime he has to show vulnerability, there is such acting going on. And I don't know if it's partly the director saying, this is a plot point, make sure this is clear.
With that said, what did we think about the direction and production?
It has a lot of directorial skill. I did notice one thing in particular that really bothered me, and when he's in the first storm, the background, the ocean, and all the storm elements are green screened, and it's very, very clear. And that was a little disappointing, because everything else in terms of the production is very strong. The editing is incredible. I mean, because there's no talking and we're looking so much at all the little things that he's doing, the edit has to be very clear. The continuity has to be very clear, and it is.
I appreciated the fact that they didn't rely on these heavy-handed Hollywood beats where, you know, somebody's almost gets chopped off by a shark and then he realizes he wants to live. It was all pretty subtle.
What you have here is a man versus nature and man versus himself film. But without really delving into those two themes, I don't feel like I was ever really thinking about that.
It's an experience kind of film. It's the kind of movie that isn't really trying to make a statement. It's just trying to show you a situation that is extraordinary.
I guess I feel like I've seen that sort of film before, and I want it to say something or I want to feel something. If it doesn't make me think, and if it doesn't make me feel, then I'm not totally sure why I'm watching it.
This isn't a movie that you need to rush out to see, but I think you should see it on the big screen. So for that, I'm going to say, see it.
All Is Lost is gonna please all audiences. Don't get lost while finding the theater. See it.
It's well made, it's interesting, but it doesn't plumb the depths of humanity. And for that, I give it a stream it.
So our vote's out up to 2.5 tickets, which is a see it for All Is Lost. Cheers.
We won. We did
Yes.
I feel lukewarm.
I was not lost.
Captain Phillips pilots an unarmed container ship off the Somali coast.
Everything okay?
I don't like the look of that.
But Somali pirates hijack the ship and take the captain hostage.
Look at me. Sure. I'm the captain now.
In the ensuing standoff, they all face forces they never expected in Captain Phillips.
Hi, I'm Aaron.
Hi, I'm Zoriana.
And I'm Leah, and today we're here to discuss Captain Phillips, the new film starring Tom Hanks. We've all just seen it. What do we think?
It was engaging, it was complex, it was tense as all heck. I mean, I was just, you know,
Which is all signs of a good
hours.
movie, because we all know how the story ends. This was
Right.
a highly publicized incident, so we know the story going into it. And the fact that it was so wonderfully shot and so marvelously acted and kept you in such suspense is a testament to the filmmakers and the acting.
Yeah, I mean, the pace of this film just never lets go.
Here, Billy Ray, the writer, really knows how to create that sort of tension and suspense. This is a guy who wrote Flight Plan with Jodie Foster. He did the Hunger Games, huge hit, and had a lot of action and suspense. So this story was, in a way, kind of up his alley, because all those elements that he really shines at in script form, he was able to do it here with Captain Phillips.
I thought it was very interesting, the choices that Billy Ray made in terms of adapting this memoir from Richard Phillips, A Captain's Duty. There are a lot of things that could have been focused on with this particular international incident. And what it really seemed to boil down to for me was this struggle or this tension between these two captains.
We don't just side with Captain Phillips 100% of the time, all the time. And it's because we get to see what the Somali pirates have to go through. In the beginning of the film, maybe 60 seconds after we see Captain Phillips, we go right to Somalia, and we're introduced to all of the Somali pirate characters, especially Musa, who is the leader of the pirate group who tries to take the ship hostage. And you feel for him, and that you don't always have that with a villain, and I think that's what makes a great villain.
This was not a political film. This was
Yes.
not a religious film. The core of this movie was humanity. The Somalis who thought that Americans had everything and they had nothing, and so they had no qualms about doing this, and they were doing it for their own survival.
Right, and with this human story, we get this tragic David and Goliath story where we just know there's no way David is going to beat Goliath in this instance. And you wind up feeling bad for the pirates. I mean, you really feel for them. You just
They're
think,
young, they're inexperienced,
They're
and
hungry.
they don't have the tools
Yeah.
to survive.
What really makes the script successful is that our protagonist of Captain Phillips has a very everyman quality to
Exactly.
him. And by the end of the film, at the ultimate scene of the film, you really see that shine through. And I mean, that was one of the most powerful scenes I've seen in a film all year.
well, speaking of that most powerful scene,
To me, he's back in fine form. I feel like he's sort of strayed a little bit away from what we wanted to see him. And we do like him as that everyman, but also as a guy who delivers these performances.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, there was a time where, like, every year he was being nominated for an Oscar, you know?
He's definitely going to get nominated this year.
You know the drill. We stay hidden no matter what. I don't want any hostages. We stay locked down until help arrives. No one comes out until you hear the non-duress password from me, which is supper time.
Tom Hanks was very generous in talking about his co-star Barkhad Abdi, who plays Musa. First-time actor, never been in front of a camera before, and his co-pirates. This guy holds his own. This guy holds his own on the screen opposite Tom Hanks.
That's insane.
I mean, it was just brilliant, and
Yeah.
it was very raw and very energetic. And this young man was just such a natural. They all were.
He did a great job of making the villains more layered, not only in terms of the way the script was written, but in his performance.
No one get hurt if you don't play no game.
The ship's broken. We had to go.
Nobody gets hurt. Easy.
Hey!
Look at me. Sure. Look at me. Sure. I'm the captain now.
And then you have somebody like Faisal Ahmed who plays in that G, who's the crazy tall guy who just wants to kill everybody all the time. And it's like he's still nuanced, but there's that juxtaposition, and it creates such an interesting full picture of these villains. The real triumph of this film is the authenticity, especially in terms of the directing and the production.
It's got that traditional Paul Greengrass feel and energy to it.
Yeah, totally. We have hyperkinetic editing. The film was shot 75% on the water, on real cargo ships, on real aircraft carriers.
The handheld camera provides a very stripped down, very non-glamorous, non-Hollywood way of portraying this, which gives us in the space, in the moment, almost as though it's happening in real time. So it does feel like we're actually there, and the tension is palpable.
Shooting in this claustrophobic style that we're involved and the actors are involved.
Not allowing the actors to meet each other until they actually meet each other on camera.
Yes, the Somalis and the Americans did not meet until they boarded that ship to take over that boat. This film was pulsating, nail-biting, and nerve-wracking with Tom Hanks in top form. See it.
Captain Phillips is a tragic David and Goliath tale that keeps you on the edge of your seat. You must see it.
This movie delivers on all levels. It's an amazing film and definitely one of the best of the year. I say see it. Cheers!
Cheers!
To unknown actors. I give great eyeline.
You do. You do.
Who knew the guy from The Great Escape could direct an emotional slave epic?
Take 3 parts Downton Abbey, add in the 1 vampire, and you get, what did I say?